curiosity, what was it like working at the great MIT?
Ah, it's a nice question. It happened at a very interesting time. It was in the middle of the COVID lockdown. So I can say that it was quite an experience meeting people that have really high ambitions and they are very very talented. But I unfortunately I could not meet any of them in person. I when I arrived in the US, it was already delayed because of the lockdowns and flight cancellations. So when I arrived there, I was just working in my apartment for a few months. I didn't meet any of them in person. It was just meetings on Zoom, and I never even like worked at the campus. So I did not unfortunately get a feel of how it is to be in that environment. But it's quite challenging, and it's such a vibrant ecosystem over there with a lot of startup companies. So MIT and Harvard, they are very close to each other within 2 kilometers, and it's filled with the best brains in the world.
We also couldn't help but notice that you worked on a project briefly at IISc in animal behavior. So what was your experience like?
Yeah, sure. This takes me back down my memory lane. Think it was in 2010 that I did this. I was 2 years into my engineering, and at that point, I wanted to sort of because my plan was to do research in science. And until that point, I had never done any research. I mean, we had just like gone on Wikipedia pages, and we would just download that information and write assignments, and that would be our research. But when I did this, it was actually a summer research fellowship that's organized by I think three academies in India: Indian Academy of Sciences, National Academy of Sciences in India, and Indian National Science Academy. Last I checked, I think it was this week. They still do run this program. It happens once a year in the summer. But I think for this year they have um, the due date is over. I think the due date for submitting
Yes,
applications
it
was
was
30th.
November 15th.
Yeah. So yeah, I would really recommend people to apply to that. It gives a very nice experience. But I'll come back to my experience. So yes, IISc, because I was also living in Bangalore, IISc was like my dream institution to do research in, and I was selecting out of the list of the labs which I could apply to, like, and I was like, I just want to do something in life sciences. I just want to get a feel of how it is to work over there. And what I worked there, it's very fond to me, but it's completely unrelated to what I'm doing right now. I worked in the Center for Ecological Sciences. So and I studied animal behavior. I studied behavior of insects, wasps specifically. It was very interesting to me because it didn't involve any working in the lab with chemicals or anything like that. They had something called a vespiary, which is a large room in which you have small wooden cages, cubicle cages with windows from three directions. And the scientists in that lab would collect nests of wasps from the wild, and they would bring it and put it in those cages for observation. So my job was to like sit for hours. I remember I would sit for 3 hours at a stretch with my data sheet in my hand. And I just had to observe every 5 minutes what's happening, which wasp is walking, what kind of behavior it's doing. They had codified all their behaviors, like if it's moving its antennae, if it's like doing something like this, which is called grooming. So and if it's like peeping inside each of the cells in the nest, so all of this had to be noted. And the interesting thing about that was that uh, in a beehive, you know that the queen bee is like the largest bee in the beehive, so you can identify which is the queen. But in these wasps, you cannot differentiate the queen from the rest of the members. So you could only identify it by seeing whether it's laying an egg or not, because only the queen can lay the egg. Um, yeah, so I mean, I could go on and on, but it was a nice experience for me, and I worked with a very respected professor, Professor Gadakkar. He is very well known in the field, and I really built a lot of nice friendships over there with the researchers. It was a very nice environment, and I thought, okay, this is nice. So research is not always gloom. People are very friendly. It's a very chill environment. There's no formalities as such. You can have fun. You can. There are periods of struggle where you don't get data, but you always have the companionship of your group members that cheer you up. And I really like them, like working over there.
How long was the internship?
2 years. It was for 2 months, from June to August. I think the fellowship program allows you to choose which months you would like to do it
Yes, it
within a
does.
range of. I was just going to say, like, you can apply to that fellowship program, but also otherwise you can freely network with people in these institutes. You could write to the professors. Um, okay, this program it actually pays you to work over there, but you could also, if you're just interested and want to gain experience, you could write to professors, say that you're really interested, come up with a proposal. They just want to know that you are really interested and you're not going there just for the sake of doing an internship. And I'm pretty sure people in all these research labs, they will be very happy to have young scientists over for a couple of months. Yeah, so just contact them by email or LinkedIn, schedule a meeting, and yeah.
Just out of curiosity again, have you ever observed any unusual observations, like if you see something on your computer which you're not really getting to see when you're actually working, or when the wet lab scientists are working on it, or something like that?
I wouldn't call it unusual, but sometimes if you haven't seen the structure, you haven't seen how the atoms are aligned. Wet lab scientists are sometimes they find it difficult to think what could be the rationale of the result that they are getting. So when they work, they know that the reaction goes from this substrate to this product, and maybe these amino acids are involved, but they don't know how exactly they are arranged in three-dimensional space. So they could only come out with hypothesis, and that it's good that you asked, because that was one of the things we were trying to answer, because there were multiple hypotheses of how this reaction happens. So there was amino acid A, there is amino acid B. So some papers would say that amino acid A is involved in breaking a bond and take, like, there's a transfer of charge and so on. So, and some would argue that amino acid B, which is also at the same distance in the other direction, that's involved. So we, using computational tools, we got an opportunity to test both of these hypotheses, and then to say that this one is much more likely, and this one we don't see it happening because of such and such reasons. So that's an added benefit of having a computational analysis.